All right. Good morning or afternoon, everyone. My name is Fabrice Fretz, and I am the Deputy Head of the Water Section at the Swiss Agency for Development and Cooperation, SDC. And on behalf of FDC and the International Water Management Institute, it's my pleasure to welcome you today to this session entitled Solar-Powered Water Solutions for Climate Resilient Agriculture. We're really happy to have you with us as we explore how solar irrigation can strengthen farmer resilience, secure water access, and promote sustainable agriculture, particularly in South Asia and East Africa. As you know, agriculture remains the backbone of livelihoods and food security across many developing and emerging economies. But as farming intensifies, especially through groundwater irrigation, the demand for energy to pump water is rising. Add to that the pressures of climate change, rising temperatures, and unpredictable rainfall patterns, which are only making things more challenging. Fortunately, there's a bright spot, literally. With the cost of solar panels dropping, solar irrigation pumps are gaining traction. They're now central to renewable energy strategies and agriculture support programs in many countries. These pumps offer a cleaner, more sustainable alternative to fossil fuels and can boost productivity. But the transition isn't without its hurdles. We must be mindful, of course, of the risk of worsening groundwater over-extraction, limited access for smallholder and women farmers, and the need for financially viable models that attract private investment and reduce reliance on subsidies. That's where the SoLAR project comes in. Supported by SDC and implemented with the International Water Management Institute, this initiative has gathered valuable evidence on the water, energy, food, livelihood nexus. It's tested innovative, context-specific models, influenced policy, and most importantly, benefited smallholder farmers, all with the goal of making the energy transition just and inclusive. So today, we'll kick off with a keynote speech by Dr. Nicole Lefort, followed by insights from the SoLAR projects. Then we'll dive into a rich discussion with our expert panel on how to scale socially inclusive, sustainable, and financially sound solar irrigation models. So thank you once again for joining us, and I really look forward to a lively and inspiring exchange. And before we start with our keynote speech, I'd just like your attention for a few minutes of a video presentation on the SoLAR project. Thank you.
There are approximately 25 million diesel and electrical pumps in South Asia, generating around 7% of global carbon emissions. To meet the crucial target of limiting global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius, countries must reduce greenhouse gas emissions across all sectors, notably agriculture. International Water Management Institute, IMI, is working in Bangladesh, India, Nepal, and Pakistan to support national commitments of reducing emissions from agriculture. Through a project supported by the Swiss Agency for Development and Cooperation, IMI is promoting solar-powered irrigation, working closely with farmers and other groups for a sustainable and climate-resilient agrarian future.
আর বর্তমানে আমরা যেভাবে আমরা পানি নেই সোলার পাম্প দিয়ে এটা অনেক এখন সময়ের দিক থেকে অনেকটা এগিয়ে আছে এবং আমরা এটাতে খুব সিম্পল ভাবে পানি নিতে পারি যেমন আমরা স্বামী স্ত্রী দুইজন চাষাবাদে কাজ করি এখানে আমার এখন আর থাকা লাগে না কিন্তু আগে আমাকে থাকা লাগতো কারণ মেশিন আনা নেওয়ার কাজে আমাকে সাহায্য করা লাগতো আর বর্তমানে আমি অন্য একটা কাজ করি শিক্ষকতার কাজ করছি আর আমার স্বামী বাড়িতে এসে কৃষিকাজ দেখাশোনা করে যেটা তার পক্ষে খুবই সম্ভব হয়েছে
મારી વાડી પરમિશિયામાં આવેલી છે સોલાર પેનલ લગાવેલી છે સરકાર તરફથી એટલે એમાં અમારે લાભ મળ્યો છે દિવસે 6:30 લાઇટ આવે છે 6:30 સાંજે જાય છે એટલે એ પાવર 12 કલાક આવે છે 19 પહેલાં અમારે ફાયદે એમાં રાતે 8 કલાક લાઇટ આવતી અને દિવસે 8 કલાક આવતી અઠવાડિયે 8 કલાક આવે અઠવાડિયે નાઇટમાં આવતી 8 કલાક એટલે એમાં એ ફાયદા અમને અને પાછા ઘડીએ ઘડીએ ઝટકા આવતા પાણી પૂરું પોગતું નહોતું પીતું નહોતું.
Following experiences with solar irrigation pumps in India, IMI has applied the insights on a pilot in Nepal. Net metering for grid-connected solar irrigation has been signed in Nepal in the year 2024.
पहले ना इतना रहल जब से सोलर हलल नु जब से बहुत आमदनी हो गई ढेर आमदनी हो गई कोई के सोलार हलल बा खेती रहती तरकारी सब्जी सब होता बटन दबाई बस शुरू हो जाई बटन दब दिए बंद हो जाई चालू हो जाई बहुत फायदा बा ये सोलार से.
IMI was successful in signing a document making an agreement between Saurya Urja Krishak Samuh and Nepal Electricity Authority.
ये सबसे जो आसान भी है और मुफ्त जो है पानी का कोई खर्च नहीं है इस पे. एक दफ़ा आप सोलर लगा देते हैं तो उसके बाद आपका पानी फ्री हो जाता है.
Over the past 4 years, IMI has achieved notable results. Capacity building efforts enhance solar irrigation pump programs, fostering climate resilient livelihoods, diversified income sources, increased profits, reduced women's workload, and improved energy outcomes. IMI's impactful research on groundwater and adaptation benefits contributes significantly to global discourse on solar irrigation, highlighting its importance in sustainable water management.
All right, so now we will move on to our keynote speech of the day. And for that, I'd like to introduce Dr. Nicole Lefort, who is an Associate Director of Sustainable Agriculture Water Management at the Daughtry Water for Food Institute at the University of Nebraska. She leads global initiatives to improve water access and management for sustainable agriculture, particularly for smallholder farmers. She's got over 30 years of international experience in research, policy, and development, including work with policy think tanks. And she brings expertise in water governance, solar irrigation, markets, and gender. Dr. Lefort, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Fabrice, for the introduction. And thank you to IMI and partners for inviting me to participate in this session. I've been working on solar irrigation with IMI, but as well as other partners for over 10 years. So we're seeing a lot of changes in the markets for solar irrigation. So I will draw on some cases from several countries in East Africa, West Africa, Latin America in particular for what I want to talk to you about today. And I'll start by saying that I tend to look at two questions with solar. The first is why solar? You know, why do we want to use solar for climate resilience? There may be other approaches to water lifting or pumping for climate resilience, so why solar? So that has to be one of the first questions that we consider. And then if we look at why, and there's strong evidence on the benefits, then we have to look at how. So we need to understand why this is necessary, and then how would we go about it? So I will try to talk about both of those questions a little bit today. Next slide, please. So one of the contributions that solar pumps can make to climate resilience is actually because of multiple uses. So we often think about irrigation as one of the main benefits, and of course it is. But in the surveys that have been done and some of the qualitative research also that's been done, it actually shows that solar pumps are often used for multiple purposes, much more than other forms of pumps. And so when they're used for domestic uses, for wash, for food preparation, for hygiene, the families benefit and the households benefit more than some other types of fossil fuel pumps, for example. So one of the benefits towards resilience is actually that solar pumps can be used for those multiple purposes. They're often situated closer to the household, which tends to increase inclusivity in how those pumps are used. So one of the really strong arguments on why solar for climate resilience actually has to do with the multiple uses for solar pumps. Next slide, please. So we can say, okay, so you can get multiple uses and multiple benefits, but couldn't you do that with other types of energy for pumps? So yes, you might be able to use fossil fuel pumps, or you might be able to use electric pumps to have some of those similar benefits. So one of the key aspects of solar pumping is to de-link water and energy access, which offers much more stability in terms of those benefits and the flow of those benefits. So in some areas, and in fact, in most countries, fossil fuels are not subsidized and electricity is not subsidized. So the energy costs of pumping can be quite high for smallholder farmers in particular, and also for those multiple uses of the pump, which may be one of the reasons why the multiple uses is particularly strong for solar pumps. The other thing is that during crisis, we see that people tend to have a decrease in access to fossil fuels. So there can be disruptions to the fuel supply, as well as high variability in fuel costs. So what happens is when you have global crisis or regional crisis, and there's a disruption in fuel supply, the cost of food production also goes up. People will start cutting back on the amount of pumping that's done for both food production and for household uses. So in using solar as your energy, you actually are delinking both the constraints to energy access, as well as the fluctuations and shocks in terms of energy costs. So there's a real benefit for resilience in particular, whereby the stability in energy access and cost helps smooth out and stabilize food production and income. Next slide, please. One of the really important aspects of increasing and stabilizing water access is for food production. So some research has been done. In fact, there's more research even coming out every year on the linkages between smallholder irrigation, food production, and nutrition. So there's multiple pathways between water access and food production. One of the key ones that we found in East Africa is actually through income. People often make the assumption that irrigation benefits strictly through own consumption of food. But as the farmers in Ethiopia like to tell us, we can only eat so many carrots and cabbage, so we sell a lot of what is produced. And by increasing income, a lot of the households use that income to purchase other foods, such as animal-based food sources, which provide key nutrients. And in some of the research that was done during an ENSO or a drought event, there was actually evidence that the households that had access to water for irrigation were able to stabilize their income, stabilize food production, and the incidence of the Z-scores, or the incidence of stunting and wasting, actually decreased. So there is increasing evidence that the access to water for food production, and particularly for income pathways, really enhances household nutrition. So these are some of the ways in which solar irrigation in particular enhances climate resilience, primarily through food production, but also through the other uses that have been mentioned. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, if you go through the question of why solar for climate resilience, and you come back with a positive response and some strong evidence that solar in particular is beneficial, and then you have to ask, okay, so how do we expand access to solar irrigation? The perception, of course, is that solar pumps are very expensive. And even though there's good analysis that suggests over time the operating costs are lower, there still is that upfront cost. And so how do we scale this? How do we make it possible for more and more people to be able to access solar pumps? And while we really want to be able to say this is going to be easy and quick, the truth is that scaling is hard. Irrigation is always hard. It's very context specific, but there have been some experiences with solar pumps in particular. So for example, in terms of finance, there's been a lot of excitement over pay to own, lease to own, asset-based finance for purchasing solar pumps by farmers. While it seems very innovative, and in some ways it is, it hasn't always been very successful. By increasing the amount of credit available to smallholder farmers to purchase pumps, you're actually putting a lot of pressure on the solar pump distributors and the solar pump manufacturers that are going to have to provide that finance. So it's not constraints that we can't overcome. We certainly can, but there is a lot more complexities than were first understood. Another one of the things that we're seeing is that there is a growing number of sizes and designs of solar pumps that are on the market and aren't available. There's a huge variation in these. There's a lot of concerns in countries about how these are being monitored and tested. And the other thing is that we see that when the farmers are very successful in a year or two, they want to upgrade, they want to buy a new solar pump that's bigger. And so we need to have mechanisms available so that farmers can size up as their operations grow. There are additional things. I really, unfortunately, would not have time to go into everything, but there are issues around capacity. And also the, in that sense, it's the capacity of the system, so irrigation system as well as human capacity. But a lot of the cost of solar pump systems actually isn't the solar pump individually, it's part of a whole system. And so we have to look at the other parts of the system and how to reduce the costs of those components in order to reduce the cost of the overall system. Value chain integration and participation. So looking at ways in which produce off-takers can participate in the finance process and guaranteeing markets and prices. And another really promising area is around irrigation as a service, so non-ownership models. And some of those are being tested under projects that are ongoing. So those are just a few of the challenges and constraints, but some of the lessons that we've learned and ways that we're looking at moving forward on making solar pumps more accessible. So the next slide, please. And I promise this is the last one to manage time. So just a couple of things that we're seeing where policies and finance mechanisms are really starting to spread and have some impact on cost. One is removing customs duties and taxes. So that's a policy mechanism. And another of those is blended finance. And I think it's really important to emphasize blended finance. As Fabrice said in the introduction, this needs to be a just and inclusive and equitable expansion of solar access. And in order to do that, blended finance isn't just something that would be nice, it's going to be something that's absolutely necessary. And so there needs to be a lot more emphasis on how to introduce the blended finance without necessarily introducing subsidies and other mechanisms that can interfere with the local markets. So on that note, I'm going to stop there, and I would welcome any questions, and you can put those in the chat box as well. So Fabrice, back over to you.
Thank you very much, Nicole. And yes, indeed, if you do have questions, please put them in the chat, and we'll have a moment at the end of the session also to take up questions live. Nicole, thank you. I think you've pretty much made the case for for solar irrigation. You've talked about the constraints as well, and that's what we would like to look at now in the specific case of solar, especially what has been achieved up to now in this project. And for that, I'd like to give the floor first to Dr. Darshini Ravidranath. She's the project lead for SoLAR 1, phase 1 and 2, and she leads a research group at IMI. She has over 15 years of experience across government research, multilateral agencies and NGOs, with expertise in climate finance and resilient development strategies. She previously served as principal policy advisor and program lead international climate finance at the UK government. And I'll just present also very quickly Dr. Muluken Adam Zeged. He is Deputy Country Representative for IMI in Ethiopia, and he's the co-lead for the SoLAR program. He leads research at IMI on innovation scaling with a focus on solar energy. And previously, he was a postdoctoral researcher at Leibniz Institute of Agriculture Engineering and Bioeconomy. So, Darshini, over to you for presenting the achievements of SoLAR 1 in South Asia. Thank you.
Thank you, Fabrice. Thank you, everyone, for being here. It's quite early on a Sunday for a lot of people. So it's nice to see. I think I'm going to quickly go over the work that we led with SDC in SoLAR 1 in South Asia. You can go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So SoLAR 1 was a program that was initiated. It ran for 5 years between 2019 to 2025 in 4 countries in South Asia, so India, Pakistan, Nepal, and Bangladesh. The goal of the project was to produce robust empirical evidence. When we started this project, solar irrigation was not as popular as it is now, I will say. So the project looked to produce empirical evidence to inform the creation of groundwater responsive and socially inclusive solar irrigation policies. And then we looked to test and validate innovative strategies, financial solutions, and interventions that's advanced sustainable and inclusive scaling of solar. And finally, we wanted to enhance national and global knowledge and capacity in the design and implementation of solar irrigation beyond South Asia as well. So the project has had a number of really interesting results. Some of the key impacts relate to gender inclusive solar irrigation. So through the program, we were able to advocate for gender sensitive policies and piloted financial models to ensure equitable access to SIPs for women farmers and marginalized groups. They're often groups that are left out of the energy transition very often. And solar irrigation is a women-friendly technology, and that in itself helped us sort of advance and advocate for some of this. We introduced microfinancing models, a number of innovative financial models. I'll give you an example in a minute or so. And that enhance accessibility, reduce financial barriers for smallholder farmers. We've, through the program, advocated for solar-powered irrigation to replace diesel systems in all of our project countries. We've been able to demonstrate that it leads to lower emissions, groundwater conservation, and high-value crop adoption, which supports resilient livelihoods. Through the program, we also piloted first-of-its-kind grid-connected solar irrigation pumps. We've introduced net metering and surplus electricity sales. And we've been able to really leverage the experience from each of our countries. So we've had policymakers from Nepal and Bangladesh visit India, where the grid connectivity is a little bit more evolved, and learn from that and take those lessons and pilot them in their respective countries. And finally, lastly but not leastly, of course, is capacity building and knowledge sharing. We've been able to strengthen technical skills and system maintenance through a number of training programs, field visits, collaborative learning, like I said, and ensuring long-term sustainability of SIP across regions. Next slide, please. Thank you. So the key learnings from the program were that we were able to show through solid evidence and science that climate mitigation and adaptation is benefited by reduced diesel use and also helping farmers cope with variability. It supports livelihood diversification. Farmers were growing more high-value crops. They were able to irrigate during the non-rainfall seasons. And importantly, without notably increasing groundwater use. This is one of the biggest critiques, I think, of solar irrigation is that it will it lead to groundwater overexploitation, particularly in regions like South Asia, where that is quite prevalent. But through our findings, we found that this is not necessarily the case, albeit I will say it is very context specific, of course, and depends on a number of other things. We've tested diverse business models, including, like I said, grid integration pilots and innovation funds, and looked at scalable solutions in different agroeconomic contexts in South Asia. We've had some strong policy advocacy that has made solar programs more inclusive and effective. In Nepal, for instance, they have revised their subsidy disbursement criteria to ensure 1/3 women and small farmers are included. And in India, we've shared our findings with the Ministry of New and Renewable Energy, and it is expected to influence the design of PM Kusum in 2027. PM Kusum is one of the largest solar energy programs in the world. So even getting the ear of someone from the government that leads implementation on that is a huge success. In Bangladesh, using evidence from our pilots, IDCOL have approved 56 new solar irrigation pumps, of which 39 sites will be connected to the grid. And in Pakistan, we've created web-based modules for solar suitability mapping and a pump sizing tool, which have been developed and extended to 3 provinces. And beyond the lifetime of this project in Pakistan, there is, through the findings of this program, there's been huge demand. And they've also approached the team to further expand this program. So I think we've had, and we've ensured through all of this that any of the innovations that we've tested and validated are supported. So we've ensured targeted capacity building, especially for women, and we've strengthened technical ownership and advanced gender and social inclusion. Beyond the 4 project countries as well, we've been approached by a number of countries. Bhutan was one of them, and we've supported and assisting them in implementing 2 pilot solar lift irrigation systems, which was recently successfully completed. Next slide, please. So these are just some of the findings. I'm not going to go over the numbers in too much detail right now, but just to show you that, we've been able to demonstrate the link between solar irrigation and improved farmer income and therefore climate resilience, greenhouse gas mitigation and energy efficiency, water saving. We've actually seen 14% energy use reduction reported by farmers using solar in Gujarat and India. And the project has had massive outreach beyond the project countries as well, which is always nice to see. Next slide, please. Thank you. This is just one of the models that we are currently also testing. It was tested under SoLAR 1, and we're taking it forward in SoLAR 2 as well. It's a community-based solar lift irrigation model. We supported in the setting up of a pump in a tribal area of India and Madhya Pradesh. And the intervention is targeted at 2 tribal-dominated villages where over 75% farmers are reliant on rain-fed agriculture and have lacked access to reliable irrigation, which has limited their ability to cope with the impacts of climate change. And we've also introduced different business models here, including the earn first, pay later model and 10% upfront cost with recovery through water sales. We've brought in women water user associations with over 15 members in 2 villages. And we've been able to, even the initial impact has shown that we've been not only able to save water, but they've also been able to grow vegetables. They've shifted their cropping patterns. And initially hesitant, we've also seen women farmers are now taking the lead. They've installed a solar-powered mini rice mill for off-season income, which is excellent to see. And like I said, this marks a huge shift towards, greater confidence in renewable energy and making sure that women and marginalized groups are as much a part of the energy transformation as anyone else. So thank you. Next slide. Thank you so much. I'm now going to hand over to Mulukan, who'll talk about how we're taking the lessons from phase 1 into phase 2 and expanding beyond South Asia to East Africa as well.
Yeah, thank you so much, Darshini. For the sake of time, I want to make it a bit rather short, my presentation. So as Darshini already mentioned, in phase 1 of SoLAR program, we saw how solar power irrigation and energy solution can boost productivity. So how it improve resilience and empower smallholder farmers. So building on this learning, phase 2 will run from July 2025 until December 2028 and expand across 4 countries, so India, Bangladesh, Ethiopia, and Kenya. So our aim is here to strengthen the enabling environment for socially inclusive and climate resilient solar energy system. So in this phase will directly benefit vulnerable population by enhancing energy and water security, reducing emission and strengthening climate resilience through for outcomes, which include evidence-based policy design, innovative finance, capacity building, and scaling solar through living labs. So our theory of change, just briefly, our theory of change for phase 2 is rather very straightforward, but at the same time ambitious. At its core, we are addressing barriers at multiple levels, right? The first one is on policy, the second one on finance, capacity, and innovation ecosystems. This enable solar to scale sustainably. So by generating evidence, which is an outcome 1, and co-developing financial models and strengthening capacity and validating innovation through living labs, we aim to shift from pilots to systemic adoption. Each outcome, so outcome 1 to 4, is connected and ensuring that when we learn in one domain, fits directly into the others. Just briefly, the 4 outcomes. The first outcome is evidence policy design. So outcome 1 focuses on supporting policymakers with digital tools and data to make informed decisions. For example, we are developing the Water Energy Food Solar Suitability Index, the first of its kind across the 4 countries of our project areas. So this will allow us to identify priority regions for solar adoption. In addition, within this outcome, tools such as solar irrigation pump, sizing platform will help decision maker to improve the design and targeting of solar schemes, ensuring efficiency and inclusivity and sustainability. When you come to an outcome 2, which is accelerating finance. So finance, as has been already mentioned even today, financing remains one of the biggest barriers for smallholder farmers. So in outcome 2, we aim to co-develop innovative finance solutions such as pay-as-you-go models, revolving funds, or credit facilities tailored to the need of the smallholder farmers. For example, in South Asia, we are working with institutions like Nabarad and Idicol, while in East Africa, in Ethiopia and Kenya, we are assessing the feasibility of a Solar for Africa Irrigation Investment Fund. So by connecting public and private finance with climate-smart design, we can openly equitable access to solar technologies. So the third outcome is capacity building and knowledge sharing. So even if we have like a strong policy in finance, adoption will stall without capacity. That's why outcomes is specifically focusing on knowledge, skill, and collaboration. So we will work with different TVTs and universities and government extension services to train farmers, local technicians, and implementing officials. So with a strong focus on women and marginalized groups. So we will integrate technical and financial extension agents into government system and convene multi-stakeholders forums, policy hackathons, and South-South exchange to keep knowledge flowing across the 4 countries. So finally, the outcome 4 is about piloting and validating through living labs. So this outcome is about validating and scaling readiness. We will test the tools that is developed, the business models that is developed already in outcome 1 and 2 in real life context to ensure that women and marginalized farmers are central to the process. We will then use a structured scaling readiness approach to identify pathways, actors, and partnership required to take innovation beyond pilots into sustainable and large-scale use. This outcome, in a way, ensures that innovation does not remain in the lab, but also translate into impact on the ground. So finally, the SoLAR program is about enabling smallholder farmers across the 4 countries to access sustainable, inclusive, and resilient solar solution through evidence, finance, capacity, and innovation platform. We aim to create a system exchange. So we are very grateful to our partner, particularly ACDC, for their continuous support. Yeah, thank you very much, and I look forward to your discussion. Over to you, Fabrice.
Thank you very much, Mulukan and Darshini. I'd actually like to hand over to Isis, who will now moderate the panel discussion. So Isis, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Fabrice. Hi, everyone, and thank you so much for joining the panel segment of this session. So Nicole spoke earlier about the why and the how of solar, and we're now going to focus on the practicalities of the how. So how solar irrigation can be scaled in a way that is resilient, inclusive, and sustainable. So we're going to hear from 3 different speakers who bring very different perspectives from government, the private sector, and research. I'm going to ask them 2 short questions, and those speakers are welcome to address them one at a time or together. And we'll have 5 minutes for each speaker. And then we will open the floor to a few questions from you, the audience, before closing the session. So it's my pleasure to introduce our panel today. Mr. Hiskias Tufera, Senior Energy Advisor at Ethiopia's Ministry of Irrigation and Lowlands, who is shaping national strategies around solar irrigation and distributed renewable energy, while also balancing energy, water, and climate priorities. Ms. Cindy Shigoli, Head of ESG at SunCulture, a leading Kenyan solar irrigation company that is innovating with sustainable business models for smallholders. And Dr. Alok Sika, who is country representative for India and Bangladesh and senior fellow at IMI, with decades of experience in integrating water, energy, and food systems across South Asia. So I will start with Mr. Hiskias Tufera from the Ministry of Irrigation and Lowlands in Ethiopia. So Ethiopia is moving forward with large-scale solar investments in agriculture, but we all know that aligning policies and managing groundwater sustainably is really complex. So my 2 questions are, 1, how can national water climate policies and strategies better align to support the sustainable use of solar irrigation, while also safeguarding groundwater resources? And second question, we know access to solar irrigation can be uneven, particularly for women and marginalized farmers. So what specific strategies are currently in place to ensure equitable access, and how can development partners effectively complement these efforts?
Thank you for the questions, and also thank you for inviting me. Again, my name is Hiskias Tufera. I'm the Special Advisor to the Minister here at the Ministry of Irrigation and Lowlands in Ethiopia. We have been working on several initiatives over the last few years on basically transitioning from diesel-powered irrigation systems from anywhere from large-scale to small-scale and micro irrigation systems. And so our strategy is twofold. First is it's not just solarizing, but also when we talk about climate resilience, it's both adaptation and mitigation. So we're not just replacing the diesel with solar, but also we're bringing in water efficient technologies, because I think the adaptation part is also very important. This ties into your question of how do we make sure that the groundwater is not depleted, and make sure that we have enough water for other purposes, and also we're not damaging the aquifers. So this is an important aspect. Also, we are in the process of finalizing a policy directive where the pumps that will be installed will have some sort of data depository to look at the water yield as opposed to the drawdown rate, so we can determine if we're drawing down a lot more than the yield, so we can intervene. So we're using technology and also some pilots that we're in the process of launching to make sure that we have sustainable use of not only groundwater, but also surface water, because there's a lot of evaporation. We have salinity issues on some of our irrigation schemes. because of flood irrigation. So it's a very important aspect of our national irrigation initiative. On the equitable access to solar irrigation piece, I think specifically on the micro irrigation part, anywhere, any irrigation schemes or irrigation interventions that are less than 25 hectares, the focus is on youth and women, because and also any other marginalized communities, because we want to leverage especially the youth are technologically savvy. We want to bring in not only the irrigation piece, but also we're looking to actually introduce digital agronomy tools that can help them to inform them when to irrigate, when to apply some of the pesticides and chemicals and whatnot. So that's also a very intentional aspect of the intervention to bring on board youth and women into the mix as we scale sustainable irrigation.
Thank you so much. That was really interesting. Yeah, really interesting to hear about this new policy on the use of data repositories and the inclusion of youth. Thank you so much. Okay, so I'm going to ask the next question to Cindy from SunCulture. So SunCulture has done a lot of pioneering work bundling solar irrigation with financing and advisory services, but we know scaling responsibly also comes with both opportunities and risks. So my first question is, what role can the private sector, like SunCulture, play in partnering with governments, donors, and technical agencies to scale solar irrigation sustainably? So supporting the water, energy, and food nexus and avoiding issues like groundwater depletion. And similarly, what role can development partners and governments play in de-risking investment for private sector players entering the solar irrigation space? Over to you, Cindy.
Thank you, Isis. Good morning, everyone. It is a great pleasure being here this morning to represent SunCulture, where I lead the ESG works for the company. And our discussion today here is very timely and centered on a very timely issue for us in this time, which is scaling solar irrigation in a way that is not only impactful for our farmers, but also sustainable for the water, energy, and food nexus. A nexus that reminds us that all these systems are interdependent. So on your first question, Isis, I will respond to what the role of the private sector is in partnering with governments, donors, technical agencies to scale solar irrigation. And I will respond to these questions in two parts. So the first part will be our role in partnering to scale sustainable irrigation, and the second part will be our role in preserving water resources, which is the main issue of conversation here. So our role in scaling sustainable irrigation sustainably, the first and most important is innovation and access. So the private part, the private sector drives production innovation in that it leads the innovation and development of affordable and efficient solar irrigation systems, and also enables last mile distribution of these systems to smallholder farmers. The second one is capacity building. In investing in farmer trainings on sustainable irrigation practices. And this could be anything from optimal water use to crop water needs, and everything in between, all aimed towards minimizing the risk of groundwater depletion. The third rule would be the data and insights. And on this, it would be leveraging on real-time data from IoT-enabled systems that would enable the monitoring of water use patterns to inform proper water use and resource planning that would feed ultimately into what the government's role is, which is the national level water management systems. The fourth one would be inclusive business models. And under this, it would be that the private sector, a company like SunCulture, for instance, is responsible for ensuring that solar systems are distributed in an equitable manner to promote gender-sensitive financing and the pay-as-you-grow models, as has been mentioned by a previous speaker, all the while safeguarding social inclusion. In the second section of my response, which is preserving water resources, farmer education still stands out as a key role of the private sector. Leveraging on technological safeguards, including, the distribution and development of abstraction limits, for example, or inculcation of soil moisture sensors in their systems, or advisory apps that would enable farmers to monitor their irrigation and their crop water needs to ensure that sustainable irrigation is taking part. There's also our role in partnership with authorities, which is government institutions, to share data, given that the private sector mostly owns first-hand data from the farmers that are on their customer base. So partnering with government authorities to share data and gaps for sector improvement is also a key role of the private sector. And then another rule would be ESG accountability. And what I mean by this is setting up properly crafted ESG indicators pointed towards sustainable development that will ensure continuous monitoring and reporting to enable us move towards striking the balance of the water, energy, and food nexus that we require. On the second question, the role of development partners. The first one I would say would be de-risking the private sector, and how this can be done is through blended finance models and risk-sharing instruments. And there's also the role in enabling and helping the private sector push capacity building, facilitating research and data collaboration by, for example, investing in hydrogeological studies, mapping, climate modeling, all of which enable proper planning and risk mitigation and management for smallholder farmers. And then there could be demand creation, which is a big role of development partners, and how they could do this is through the introduction of subsidies or RBFs, possibly through the private sector partners. And then they could also, the development partners could also ensure that the private sectors are aligned to nationally determined contribution goals, for example, water strategies and food security plans in place. So that's my response to the two questions. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Cindy. Really interesting to hear about the systemic aspect of irrigation. Okay, so our last speaker is Dr. Alok Sikka, who is country representative for IMI in India and Bangladesh, and also senior fellow. He's worked extensively on solar irrigation policy and research in South Asia. So before I ask my questions to Alok, I would like to ask everyone in the audience if they can please put their questions in the chat if they haven't. And then we will read them out in the Q&A portion of this segment, and we'll also try to ask everyone to unmute themselves if we have time. Okay, so Alok, you have seen solar irrigation evolve over time from pilot projects to large-scale government programs. So based on your and IMI's experience, particularly in South Asia, what are, in your opinion, some of the tools that can support integration of solar irrigation into national and regional water, energy, and food nexus strategies? And then my second question is, what are the key priorities and areas for South-South knowledge exchange, given the context-specific nature of scaling solar irrigation?
All right, thank you very much, Isis, and good morning to all and my fellow panelists and the other speakers. Yeah, I know, because I see the time is clicking, because just hardly 10 minutes are left, so I'll be very quick, though I wanted to speak more. But the fact is that to be very specific on the first question, where you are talking about what tools, and based on what we have worked under the solar project in the phase 1, I think, and also now I started working in phase 2. One of the things is the solar irrigation pump sizing tool, because we know that how best we can optimize the size of the solar irrigation system. So that's something that we have been looking into. I know that in Ethiopia, IMI did something on solar suitability mapping sometimes back. So the other tool which I think would be useful to be looked into is from the water energy food nexus point of view, because I see in the chat everybody talking about the nexus nobody has talked about. So let me just take a minute to explain about this nexus, because we know that whenever we are talking about the water management alone is not going to really work, because if we are going to come up with some kind of a good policy level intervention or the physical interventions on water management, but if the other sectors, energy and the food sector policies and the interventions are not in that right direction, they may impinge upon the water management. So that is why water has to be looked into in conjunction with the energy as well as the food. And so that's somewhere that kind of a interconnectedness has to be synchronized. So there has to be synchronization and harmonization of the synergies rather than in those trade-offs. So this is something that really compelled us to look into that. As everybody's talking about, I think on the chat also I saw that what if, because the solar irrigation will be kind of hardly any operational cost, free of cost, people will overexploit the groundwater. Now, that's some of the things that we are looking into in the Nexus mode. So we have also now developed a tool which Mulliken also talked about, which is a composite water energy food nexus suitability matrix, and wherein precisely this is what we have addressed, that it is that how best, while you are looking into the solar irrigation systems and their metrics and prioritization, you look into both from the adaptation and the mitigation point of view, number one. Number two, because and that how they are really going to be looking into the groundwater sustainability and the other. So that is why now the entire country, like India is a huge country, we have divided it, the kind of the tool works. You look into adaptation and mitigation, and there are geographies where both adaptation and mitigation are important. So that way, it also then brings in the dimension of groundwater sustainability, where you look into this nexus approach. So this is some index which we have developed, which is a composite index, which not only looks into the biophysical indicators, but also the social indicators, economic indicators, and not only that, even the DISCOMs, the utilities companies, their health and their indicators are also we are trying to be really putting into. So those are the kind of a tool. The third tool, which I think I would say, is there are some empirical evidences and some modeling, like we did the groundwater modeling to precisely address this issue of how the groundwater is going to be impacted. Like in Bangladesh, we did the both empirical as well as the flow groundwater modeling, and in that kind of a situation, because it was slightly incentivized, so it doesn't have any significant impact. Like in India, where we did the empirical modeling, there also it has no impact, because in both the systems, it is being incentivized. So incentivization is another thing to be looked into, which is more from the policy angle point of view. So these are the tools that I think are the three. I have just listed 3 or 4. And so these are the ones which have to be integrated across the regions and the nations into their policies, while they are prioritizing the geographies and the areas for undertaking this solar irrigation systems. So coming to the next point, because the time is short, as I said, the priority or the areas for source knowledge exchange. Now, when we look into this too, I place South Asia and Africa, like East Africa and Africa. In Africa region, mostly what you have are the farmer-led and the donor-driven systems. And whereas in the South Asia, particularly in India, you have all government-supported programs, big government-supported programs and the policies, very clear policies. Those policies are not clear so much so in Africa. So the one thing is learning of the lessons, the prioritization of the kind of the policies which have worked in one region vis-a-vis to another region. So the policy analysis and the policy prognosis to be done, because there are a number of things which are working quite well in Africa, and not in India, because in India it's not farmer-led, it's donor-led, it's government-led. So that makes a difference. So, and then there could be various business models that we are really trying to learn into. The other important things which I think we are trying to be pushing into in the South-South knowledge, because is very targeted training and capacity building. Because unless we have a targeted capacity and training building, because generalized capacity building and training will not work. So we are looking into trying to see that what are the targeted capacity building and this thing, and the very targeted knowledge exchange. There are a number of knowledges, pieces, good and bad, in both the parts of the global South. And we don't have to only see the good things. We have to also see which did not work, because so that the others, they don't kind of look into that. So that's kind of a knowledge exchange. My final point is, which is very important to be looked into, is backward and forward linkages. When we talk about this backward and forward linkages, that have to be really prioritized and put into that. When I say backward, means manufacturing and supply side, and forward linkages, market support, value chain, and as somebody was talking about, the irrigation efficiency. So it's very important that the solar systems are integrated with precision or efficient irrigation system and bundling, which is not there in the South Asia. Thank you very much.
Sorry to cut you off, but we only have 4 minutes left. Thank you so much. Yeah, the combination of integrated solutions and cross-learning. Great. Thank you so much. Thank you to our speakers for those thoughtful reflections. Thank you to Nicole for answering all of the questions in the chat. That was really interesting to read the discussion, and I hope it can continue offline as well. Okay, I will read out the questions because I don't think we have time to let everyone unmute themselves. So, how can solar irrigation be incorporated into climate change adaptation policies for glacier-fed regions?
So you want me to go ahead with that?
Sure, go ahead.
I mean, as I mentioned that, because this is something that it is addressing both the climate change adaptation as well as the mitigation. So as I mentioned earlier, that you are increasing their resilience, you are doing by providing more and easy access to water. And then at the same time, because you are replacing the fossil fuel, and so you're reducing the carbon and all kind of emissions. So that's very straightforward, that it is addressing both adaptation as well as the mitigation.
Thank you so much. Barbara from IMI actually asked, is there any collaboration with the WASH sector, which also undertakes many initiatives for solar-powered water solutions? Can I ask this question to Cindy?
Well, unfortunately, or fortunately, my company is not in the WASH sector, so I may not be able to have a full response to the question. Sorry.
No problem. And Nicole actually responded, I have not seen any collaboration for multiple uses.
There should be. We have actually one program that we are piloting called DREAM, Distributed Renewable Energy in Agricultural Modalities. It's with GAP, and it looks to provide the nexus that the gentleman talked about, which is energy access, solar irrigation, as well as water supply for the local community. So it's the nexus of irrigation as the main anchor load, driving basically helping achieve other SDGs like the clean water access as well as access to electricity.
Thank you so much. And I have one last question for Cindy, actually. How is SunCulture approaching long-term maintenance and support to ensure that farmers trust and continue using the pumps?
So of course, this starts from the innovation and design phase, where we have a fully dedicated product department that deals with designing products as required by customers. So we will do a full-blown market research to determine what problems exist, what farmers need, and then we will design and fit our products to fill that need. The mission and objective of the company is directly focused to handling the problems and needs of smallholder farmers. So we ensure that this is the inculcation and consideration in the design of our products, and then we will make sure to source from very trusted partners. Due diligence from suppliers is done very keenly, and then our products will come in and then get tested again by our team of engineers. And then we have a whole team of field engineers that visits customers to do maintenance, and then we have a service center that also serves to do the fixes, and then there's continuous improvement based on customer feedback. So I think I would say that the most important part is designing our products with the farmer in mind and with the voice of the customer in mind.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. So that brings us to the end of our session. Thank you so much to the speakers. As a young water professional, I've learned a lot today. Thanks again to our panelists as well. And thank you so much to the TRIPUS and SIWI teams for technical support. So the recording of the session is going to be available online. And yeah, we hope the lessons from SoLAR will continue to inform resilient water solutions going forward. And we wish you a good World Water Week. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.